Well, today I'm here with Daren Jones from a really interesting company that I'm going to let him talk to you about in this interview. And this is our next episode of the Rural Entrepreneur podcast series. Welcome to the podcast, Daren.
Well, thank you for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about your company, your entrepreneurial journey. And I know it's important that in this conversation we talk about how you're actually helping empower new entrepreneurs within your business, which is a kind of cool story. So you pick any of one of those to start,
Sure.
and we'll navigate through the conversation.
So, Here Right has been around for about 16 years now. Started by a gentleman by the name of Albert Marshall, and he's the principal owner of it all. And one of the things Albert got into this sort of by accident. His family was involved as a very step away entrepreneur in a hearing care world, and he decided, let's have a look at this. So he did. One of his first things he did, he thought, what would be great is that if he gave people the opportunity to become owners, because what we have in the hearing care world, uh, they all come out trained to take care of you with a hearing loss, how to analyze, how to test, how to fit, how to make sure that you stay happy with your hearing aids and throughout your hearing journey. Because once you get a hearing aid, it's a cycle. Every 5 years you get a new hearing aid. So if you depend on the age you start getting hearing aids, we could see you 4 to 5 times, like a span of 20 to 25 years.
Mhm.
So what we're finding is that as the industry grew, what were happening is that a lot of the manufacturers were becoming vertically integrated, by meaning they were opening up their own stores directly to
Mhm.
customers. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but there was a very big segment of independent people out there that still wanted to remain independent, but didn't have, let's say, the capabilities to compete with some of the bigger names. So as we started to grow our brand, I became involved about 7 years ago here. And what we started doing, and Albert started doing this prior to me, but it really started exploding when there's both of us focusing on this, is that we would find hearing care professionals that had an entrepreneurial spirit, but didn't know what the next step was. So then that's where we came in and we says, well, we can help you with the back end stuff. We can help you understand what a P&L is, what a balance sheet is, what does it cost to run an office, how much does an operating cost work, how to price your products in such a way to make it work. So we taught them that component, but we also managed the back end for them. So we didn't make them negotiate leases, but they were involved in the process of negotiating leases. And what we wanted them to be is that the optimal clinician. You take care of the patient. But the fun part is that in this world, since we are, every 5 years somebody will come in and see us, it becomes we don't the hearing aid becomes the byproduct of what we offer. We really offer the service and support once you have the hearing device.
Right, right.
So we needed the clinician to not worry, to become an entrepreneur, but not to worry about, oh my God, it's 5 o'clock. I have to go home now, think about a marketing campaign my next acquisition of patients.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, I have to take care of AR. Oh, I have to do payroll. Oh, right, rent is due. Oh my gosh, we want to take that away from them, but still keep them within the loop. The conversation is very fluid. So what it did is, as they can go home at 5 o'clock and be their normal people, so they can unplug, whereas we can, take care of the rest. So that
Hmm.
model worked very well, because when I started here, we were 21 locations, and we're currently sitting at 84 locations, and
Wow.
all but three of them do have this co-owner model where the hearing care professional is the owner with us. And what it gives a sense to the patient is that they're now dealing with the owner of the business. And, it doesn't matter what percentage you own, you still have a say in how the operations go. Of course, there's some standardized stuff that we do, manage office manager software systems, how we market through Facebook and so on and so forth. We standardize some of the stuff, but
Mm.
still the offices don't have here is what you got to build your office to look like. We tell them the office got to reflect you. They're coming in to see you.
Mm.
So I'm sitting right now in one of my own sound locations where uh, we had a team here saying, you know what, there, we need a refresh. I said, what do you need? He says, oh, we need some new chairs. We'd like to have some pictures up on a wall that are more locally done. And I looked at him and says, you know what? Give me the budget. Let me know what you want. And I come back in today because I don't come to Owen Sound super often, but I came back in today. We have new chairs. The pictures got put up on a wall. They were sourced by a local artist. So when the patients sit
Mm,
in the waiting room, they know they're in. So there's a picture of the Chichimon. There's all that stuff there. So every office has its own unique flavor to it. Like I give you, if we go to Cochrane, Alberta, just as an example, I like to use Cochrane. Cochrane is a very cowboy town. So you come into our office, the bench is an actual old piece of wood that fell down after a lightning hit. That
yeah.
an artist. So everybody has their own little feature into the office that makes it theirs. But they still have that banner that they can hang the Here Right Canada banner outdoors and all that stuff there. So that's what we like to bring to that whole entrepreneurial spirit. So in essence, we have 84 locations, let's say 72 entrepreneurs that are with us.
That's awesome. And the thing that popped in my mind, and maybe somebody else that's listening to this is, you know, I'm thinking, well, isn't that a franchise kind of model? But what you just said is a good example of why it's not a franchise model at all. Is your environment, and if you want to have a a bench that's from a tree that got struck down by lightning in your practice, go for it. So how in other words, and co-ownership feels different than the term franchisee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and just to demystify the myth that we don't charge them a franchise fee. The corporation is owned by the three people that are on the corp. The decisions are made jointly. Uh, but at the end of the day, we want to make the environment that they come into theirs. So when you come in, you're leaving home, you're coming here 8 hours a day, 7.5 to 8 hours a day. We
Mhm.
want you to feel as comfortable here as you do when you go home. So when you lock the door and go home, you had a great, satisfying day, and there's a team trusted you to do your best with the patients, and then you trust the team to make sure that there's patients still coming in the next day. And that's what we
Mhm.
do.
Yeah. So can I probe a little bit more around this co-ownership model
Sure.
with you? So again, this is very interesting through two angles. One is on the rural market angles, which I know you have some properties or some storefronts, whatever. What would you call them actually? What do you call them?
Clinics.
Clinics. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll use the right term. So you have some rural clinics, which is an area I want to explore. Given this is a rural focused podcast. The first thing is, this idea of co-ownership. Does that kind of mean that you've got, 84 different equity agreements,
Correct.
or okay, okay, so each one is individual, and you obviously have a percentage of shares in
Yes.
a corp.
Yep.
So the 84 corps.
84 locations, but 72 corps.
Okay, that's really interesting. It it sounds like it would be difficult to manage, but I don't sense I don't sense that.
No, is it difficult to manage? We do have a support team. It took us a while to grow the support team to where it is right now.
Yeah.
If I had to say, I am directly involved with 32 of those 72 corps.
Mm,
And then my business partner obviously is involved with all 72 corps, but we do
mm,
have a support team, to be honest. And the team that we have, we built the team from the industry. So we have all people that actually did these different types of role: operations manager, business development support manager. So we don't just bring them in to the program. We also we also do, myself and another one of our co-owners as well, that are not in the office every day prescribing. We do
mm,
a mentorship program with them. So every
mm,
week we sit down and we have a sort of a 10-week program, and we go through each thing each week to help them, to make them understand that what is going on. Tell us how we can help you, uh, to get the finer nuances of what's going on in your clinic. And I think our secret sauce of success is that we don't find a location and then bring in a partner. We find the partner, then we get the location.
mm,
So, your people, if you look at some of our website, we have a location in Teeswater. Why in
mhm,
God's name would you have a location in Teeswater? Well, funny story is she's in Aurora with us. She is from Teeswater, and Teeswater just built a medical center, and turns out that the person that's building the medical center was can't remember if he was the principal or a teacher that she had when she was going to high school that knew that she was doing this. And
Mm,
she asked her, "Hey, would you mind coming into this medical center with us as a hearing clinician?" And she went, "Sure." So now we have a location in Teeswater. We go down once a week to service down there. Now, being a hometown girl, it certainly gives us an advantage.
mm,
But if you look at it, so that's our model. We find the person, then we find the location. So the same thing happened in Calgary. We just opened one in Innisfail, Alberta. Everybody's going, why Innisfail? Because our local partner there lives in Lacombe. She worked in Red Deer, and she also worked in Innisfail. So it just became a natural progression. So that's sort of our philosophy. We don't just run, oh, we're going to open up a store in Chesley tomorrow. No, if we have
mm.
from Chesley, let's build a business model to see if this will work. If not, let's propose another location not far from your home, but we want you to be at home. So when you work, you're at
Yeah,
home.
yeah, that's really interesting. But what's interesting about the Teeswater example was, you have an entrepreneur that is running a clinic in the city, I think, right?
Laura, yeah,
Yeah,
she's up in
you
Laura.
know, okay, and then so she has roots in Teeswater,
Yep.
and now, from a scaling perspective, just as an individual entrepreneur, she has this support to say, I think I could set up a clinic there because she's got your company behind it, and you're part of it as well, which is very interesting model. Very interesting. Did you transition to becoming an entrepreneur? Like, were you in the industry beforehand and then
Yes.
started working? Like, how did that shape out?
So my role, I was in the manufacturer side for about 18 years. Well, prior to being here, so up until that point, I've been around this industry now for about 24 years, roughly. I started off as sales support with the manufacturers, helped supported hearing care professionals, two audiologists that were actually territory managers, grew into
Right.
the role of a territory manager, and then at one point I was given an opportunity to be the manager of a branded type of hearing aid across Canada. So I had 13
Mm,
accounts across Canada. So my rotation was St. John's to Vancouver every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks I was on a rotation going there.
mhm,
What my role was, though, was to go in at this time. I was in there to support Chris. So my job was to help Chris grow his business.
mm,
So I had to go in and sort of study what was going on, what market I was in, how can we get this going, what can we do. So then what it gave me the opportunity to do something in this industry is called an open house. So I was at one point an open house person. I would come in, Chris would do the test. I would be the person setting up the hearing aids and putting those hearing aids on the patient. And I
mm,
was the one doing the hearing aid pitch. So I was one dealing with the objections and hearing
mm,
firsthand what was going on. So it gave me a great insight as to how the patient, because I was always B2B. Now it
mm.
became B2C. So now I started
Yeah.
understanding the customer. Fast forward a little ways further there, I started working with a company called Here.com, and I was the first employee in Canada. And their model was online marketing. And my role was to go into, again, the independent hearing clinics and say, Chris, you know what? If you have 45 minutes in your calendar, let me fill that 45 minutes. I will give you a service fee, and you will help people get hearing aids. So
Mm,
I grew that to 220 locations, and that's how I met Albert through that venture there, and then eventually coming here. So I come with industry that I don't have a license to dispense a hearing aid, but I come
mhm,
with 20 years of experience of sitting here listening to patients and understanding what was going on. The online portal, the online 3 years there gave me a great understanding because I had the opportunity to listen to the phone calls that the consultants were listening to and
mm,
coach the consultants on how you should have answered this question, or maybe try this next time with this. What
mm,
that gave me, it gave me a better understanding how patients deal with people on the phone versus in person. So as we help, so this is all part of the pitch to the new entrepreneur goes, you're not alone. You're not just getting a clinic. You're not just, hey, we're going to help you negotiate the lease. I'm going to help you grow this business.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
boots on the ground. I travel a bit. I travel quite a bit. I'm off to Newfoundland on the weekend, and it doesn't matter if you need my help. I'm there. But another thing too is we have that contact. We don't just set you up and then okay, we'll let you go and we'll talk about the quarter. No, we have
Mm.
these meetings. We have these mentorship programs. So it to give them a sense that they're not just fighting the battle by themselves.
Yeah. So at some point in time, is it Albert who you're co-owner of
Yes,
the?
yes, Albert.
Yeah.
Albert's the gentleman that owns it all.
So there was a moment in time where you went where a conversation happened. I don't want to pry,
Nope.
where all of a sudden you're now an owner. Like how did that happen? Where like and what can you tell us about that? Because that's a switch, right? You went from working for a manufacturer, working for a .com to hey, I'm now
Yeah,
I'm now an entrepreneur. I've been entrepreneurial, right?
correct.
Which you are in your heart and soul. I can see that. But there was something that happened, the switch.
So what happened was is that Albert came and talked to me because he was a customer of mine at the here.com. So I was working with his clinics to
Hmm.
fill up the spaces that he had in his calendar, and he really
Hmm.
believed in the product that I was selling. And he came to me and says, "Hey, would you mind coming and build this product for me? Like, come and build a call center for me." I says,
Hmm.
"I can do that. That's not a problem." And he
Hmm.
says, "But how about we use your contacts and help me build my base, like build up Here Right Canada."
Hmm.
And I just out of the blue, I said, "Nah, I'm not selling it. I'm not selling my wallet of knowledge without anything. I want in." And he
Hmm.
called me bluff. He says, "Okay, yeah, I'll give you a percentage." I went, "Oh my, okay, now it got real. Now it got real." Okay, okay. Then the numbers got put to paper, and as you're signing the document, going, "Okay, I now own this, and this is what I owe if it doesn't work." And I went, "Okay, so now I got to practice what I preach." That's where it came to that. I always had it in me, but it took Albert to give me the opportunity to kick me along down the road. And I use that same story when I go and talk to potential people who want to be co-owners as well. As I was in your shoes. I was
Yeah.
sitting there looking at, I had to sign that document saying, we're borrowing this money to open up this clinic. If it doesn't work, I got to pay this money out of my pocket. So you're going, okay, so before you put your name to that line, you got to be sure everywhere. And that's where it was. That's how it started.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, you know. Um, and that was how long ago, if you don't mind me asking?
7 years ago.
So 7 years, and I think you said you've grown it, what, from it's grown from 21 to 84 locations,
Yep.
over the 7 years, or
Yeah, over the last 7 years, when I started was
man.
21.
So you
And
know
then,
what's interesting? Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
What's interesting about that is, you know, one of the challenges that entrepreneurs have is going alone, right? So it's very tough to go alone. Um, so I'm told, right? So when you think about what some of the, you know, the folks out in Silicon Valley in particular, they're always saying, well, do you have a co-founder? And, you know, how do you spread the load? And do you have usually it's a hacker, a hipster, and I can't remember the other one. But basically, you have a marketer, do you have a salesperson, you
Yeah.
have a technical person, right? And realistically, that's not always the case, right? Realistically, is no, I don't. I don't know anybody. I can't afford to pay them. It's really hard to get their attention, you know, and they think my idea is crazy. Um, so what I find interesting is you know, the impact that a co-owner had or helped contribute in terms of scale is you're coming on board, you know, and helping grow it, right? So where I'm going with this is I'm just kind of going off in a bit of
No, go for it.
a a rabbit hole here, but it's always good to have a co-owner, but I don't think it's always the same thing. Well, you must have two or three co-founders when you start up because for this reason, this reason, this reason. It's not that it's not that prescriptive, right?
Mm-mm.
And it's case by case. So, you know, I had a co-owner partner that joined me, you know, and the idea was to scale the business, and it didn't work out. You know, I'd still care about her, and you know, but it just didn't work out, right? So I'm curious, how does one, you must have thought about it. I mean, you must have liked him. You must have saw the potential. It wasn't just you're in love with an idea. Plus, it was established, right? It wasn't a startup.
Correct.
Um,
It was the establishment that was there, the philosophy that he had in helping people become owners of clinics, and why it was important
mhm,
to have that practitioner on board. But I told him, says, I'm not a specialist. I don't have a license. I can't prescribe. I can't
yeah.
help you fundamentally grow. But what I had was going across the country for the last 15 years, the knowledge of everybody that were either coming up on a retirement, or people that were working for other people that want to go out on their own, but you know, never had the certainty to do it. What I liked about it is that, yeah, he did provide a somewhat security, because there's 21
Mhm,
locations, and I was
mhm,
building a call center as well, and I was building the platform, the lead acquisitions, the all those relationships there. Uh, but still, there was enough leeway in there that it gave me the power to practice what I preached. Everything that I said to
mhm,
somebody, can I put this into place? And but the fun part was is that it still wasn't it still was your money, which meant you still had to keep an eye on it, even though there was a bigger bucket to help you support and maybe a little bit through the downfall. But it was still your money. You still had to keep your eye on that. So it was fun, because you took a risk, but you had to think about the long-term effect of that risk, and if that risk didn't work, what would happen. um, but coming from, Albert has an MBA, he's a lawyer by trade. uh, you know you learn a lot from
mhm.
people. And I'm an inquisitive type, as you know. I sit around the table the last two times with you. I'm curious about everything.
Yeah.
Everything has a slight interest to me, no matter how well. Really, that's interesting. Like, but that's what it was. Is getting that help and getting that support. So it's at sometimes you just got to believe in yourself and say, yeah, he's giving me an opportunity to believe in myself, and I took it. And
Yeah, it's a combination of things in this instance, where really good, um, deep understanding of the industry, who's involved in it, really good understanding across Canada where the clinics are, who is locally, practicing, and then a track record and a relationship that you built over time with him. And it just evolved into it as opposed to,
Mhm.
you know, so it's interesting because a really, really good story. I love it. So the thing that I think I'd like to explore with you next is um, just the hearing industry as a whole. If that's, I think it's important that people understand a how important it is to be conscious of, hearing loss, the stigma of it, all the things that I think that you're faced with or your clinicians are faced with, in terms of the consumer. Um, and use me as an example. I'm 61.
Mhm.
Every now and then I'm sitting there in my living room and I'm watching something, and my wife comes in and says, "That's loud," right? So, really, doesn't seem loud to me. Um, so I'm just curious, like, walk me through what the customer experience is, and a little bit about just hearing in general, kind of what a clinician would be doing in one of your clinics, um, and more broadly speaking, why hearing is still something that people don't understand in terms of loss and the equipment you can use, and anything else you want to talk about. I'm not asking you to sell the idea of hearing better, but I
No,
guess
no.
the idea is, we all want to hear optimally well. Large aging population, it's just natural that things go downhill a little bit. And I want to live till I'm 120, right? So this hearing is something that's important, obviously. So,
It Hearing is more connected to our life, of course, eyesight and so on and so forth, but hearing is very important. So what typically happens, like, I have these discussions all the time with people, and what I like about having these discussions, when they're asking me the question about what I do, like you just did in this case, you are probing to see where am I in my hearing loss journey, or do I have a hearing loss journey?
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
the
Yeah.
probe. So it comes to me to say, my job is not here to tell you, Chris, get in, get a hearing test, do this, do this, do this. What what I am here to, I always explain to the people says, listen, hearing loss comes in different stages to different people. It takes on average a person living with a visible hearing loss 7 years before they put their feet into our clinics. That's what they live with on average, 7 years. And what gets them into our locations is one of two things. They are seeing that their friends are not around them so much anymore because they're repeating too much and it's getting too much of a hassle, or the spouse or a friend is actually telling them, hey Chris, you know what bud, I get a little tired talking to you because I got to yell and repeat myself, so would you
Mhm.
just maybe go do a test.
Mhm.
So when I'll use an example. So when Chris comes into our location, prime example, you come in, your TV's a little loud. Chris walks into my door through our doors, and Chris only wants to hear one thing. Your hearing's fine, so you can run back home to your the era. But but the stark reality is you may have a hearing loss, and we will outline it for you. So then you have that you come in here with the high expectations, goes, please, 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 please don't fail, please don't fail. It's not a fail or a pass. It's here's where you are in your hearing loss journey. There's no pass or fail.
Mhm.
Here's what a hearing aid will help you do now. But most of the time, not most of the time, a lot of times, somebody like Chris going, you know what, I'm doing okay. And
Mhm.
we say, you know what, I was expecting an answer based on the hearing loss. You are doing okay. But here's what I want you to keep in mind, Chris. Uh, when you go home today, and I do this on purpose, you're going to go home today, I want you to notice what volume your television is at, first and foremost. And then I want you to notice in 2 to 3 weeks from now, if that volume number has changed. And don't give me, well, I watched something. No, it doesn't matter. I want you to just notice. Tell me if that volume changed. Yes. And then I want you to notice if your loved ones are in the room when you're watching television or not. If they're in the room watching television and then you come in, do they leave or do they step back a little ways? So
Mhm.
what I'm doing is I'm really planting the reality in what your world is, but I'm just bringing it to your forefront where you're sort of squishing it back here, going, yeah, that's not true. No, nobody leaves the room. Nobody. That's what's going on. So I was saying there's 3 stages of hearing loss. You have hearing loss, and you're guessing right because the English language is great. You don't have to hear the whole sentence. You get the gist of it. Um, but the next stage is the most important one. You're hearing and you're guessing wrong. And
Mhm.
that's when a stark reality starts to come in. That's when you start to get the more of the frustration around you and your family members. If you notice on somebody else, I always point out that have a look at them around the family table. Are they participating in a conversation like they did before? And if you
Mhm.
are around the conversation around the table and dinner is done, and they go sit off a little ways from everybody, and everybody's sort of got to come in to see them and
Mhm.
talk to them in that environment. Well, that's a good indication that they're having a hard time. The third stage is the one that we really get concerned about. Says, listen, they're not participating in anything anymore. They're staying home, they're watching television, they're reading books, or they're just saying, I'm too busy. And in reality, they're not.
Mm.
But the
Yeah,
biggest,
it's almost like they self-isolate.
they self-isolate because
Yeah.
of the embarrassment, because they know that they're frustrating people. They know they don't understand, but there's still some people out there that are, no, I'm good. I'm good. Um, but what we tell them is that your hearing is, you hear with your brain, not with your ears. So your brain is the ones that's processing the sounds. What happens is that there's a damage inside your inner ear, and the sounds are not getting to the brain properly. So you start to forget some of the softer sounds, the S's, the P's, the T's, the N's. And as you start to, and your brain just forgets what they sound like. No
Mm.
different than if you break an arm, you put your arm up in a sling. 4 to 5 weeks later, the first thing you do is get a rehab because your brain told your arm, I'm not using you, so I'm going to forget about you
Mm.
right now. And
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
go back to rehab to get the arm going again. That's what hearing aids do. What hearing aids do will never bring back your hearing to 100%, but it will amplify to a point where you will start to hear those sounds again so you can participate in the next level conversation. Hey, listen, full disclosure, I have a set of hearing aids because I've been in this industry for a long time in my bag. If I go to a restaurant where there's too much environment, I'll pop in my hearing aids that are basically fit for a flat loss, and I'll turn on the crowd feature and kills all the background noise. So I can have a conversation.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So even though I don't have a hearing loss, I still
Yeah.
do that. You know, in the rep world, that's cheating a bit, but that's fine. I have the opportunity to do that. So what's the
Yeah.
big?
So the last part of the conversation, I want to talk about equipment. So where things have come, because there's this stigma, I think, of having this device that
Yeah.
basically tips off everybody that you've got a hearing aid and you got a hearing problem, and maybe potentially you're getting old. Like those are the things, and this is my own perception, I think. So let's talk a bit about that. But there's also, you were talking today earlier during our coffee chat about how you use a device to, and you just mentioned it in a crowded, noisy, where you put on this device to silence this everything
The
around
crowd.
you. It's kind of like the exact opposite. It's like, you don't want to hear certain things, versus you want to hear certain things. So, but you were mentioning when you're on the plane, you had this
Yep.
thing. So just
I,
talk a little bit about equipment in
so
general.
on the plane, I'll give you the example on the plane. On the plane, I have it's just an ear mold that goes in my ear that has a filter system in it. So what it does, it attenuates the sound of the aircraft around me, but I still hear speech perfectly. So it
So
actually just,
so it drowns out the aircraft sound.
but
Is
that's
that the
that's
same? Yeah, yeah.
non-mechanical. That's just done with an actual filter that's built into the ear mold. Just
Okay.
put it in, and then as soon as you put the filter in, it attenuates the sound by about anywhere from 9 to 15 dB, decibels,
Right.
and that's really all you need on a plane, just to attenuate that. Because I fly commercial a lot, I also fly a lot of small planes. If you go to East Coast, I'm going from Deer Lake to Halifax on Wednesday or Thursday.
Mm,
I know that I'm going to be in some very small aircraft. So as soon as I get in those aircrafts, I know the engine's going to, so I'll put them on. So it
yeah.
just attenuates the sound. But I also have an actual set of hearing aids in my bag. It's a real live hearing aid that I program myself for a no loss, but all I want is just to kill the background noise. So we know the
Mm,
background noise comes in at a certain decibel level. Doesn't matter where you are,
mm,
what restaurant you're
mhm,
at, it comes at a certain decibel, and all these hearing aids just attenuate. So when I started 24 years ago in the industry, a new hearing aid uh, innovation will come out, but once every 24 to 36 months.
mhm,
There'll be a new thing on the market. This is the next greatest thing. Today, I would say in the last 5 years, we're seeing new developments on an average 8 to 12 months. So there's new technology coming out every 8 to 12 months in the hearing aid world. And the hearing aids, when I first started, was an amplification of all sounds and attenuated some sounds. Whereas today, they're trying to mimic how the brain listens more and more and more. So
mm,
your brain, if you sit in your kitchen and have dinner, you know that the fridge is running. But when the fridge kicks in, you hear it for a second, and then all of a sudden, your brain forgets about it because it's a background noise that your brain's trained to. It's fine. It's just a fridge. You're in front of a computer monitor now, or a computer. You'd hear your fan. If you took a second, you'd hear the fan going.
mm,
But if you stop thinking about the fan, you don't hear it anymore because your brain automatically attenuates that noise, even though it's still ambient for you. That's what hearing aids are doing now. They're starting to mimic more and more and more of the ambient noise around us to attenuate that. So the technology is ever training. Like, we now have hearing aids that you don't have to answer your phone, just click hello, and it's an earbud.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, Bluetooth has come a long way.
And
And
yeah, and people have stuff in their ears more now than ever before, whether it's listening to music or listening to people.
the first big the first big ones, like you said, the big brown banana that went behind the ears, that's everybody's
Mm,
concept. But the first thing that really gave us a good upper hand on hearing aids was when the mandatory laws came out that you can't use a hand-free device. You have to use a hands-free device in a car. That's
hmm.
before the cars had Bluetooth. Everybody had these devices around their ear. So it didn't become so uncommon to see somebody with something around their ears. But to
Yeah.
be fair to hearing aids today, like there's one on the market right now that looks like a Google earbud. So
Mm,
if you have Google earbuds, you can put it looks like almost similar to it, and this is your hearing aid. So it looks like you're just wearing an earbud. There's
yeah.
some that goes behind the ears that are so thin and the wire is so discreet that you really have to. Somebody like myself would know right away because we know what we're
Yeah.
looking at. But
Yeah.
you can look at it, goes, you're wearing a hearing aid. A lot of people are
Yeah.
saying that today than before.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Hey, so let's talk about rural markets. So, of the 84 clinics you have, what percentage would you say are rural based, and what's that like compared to urban? Is there anything that kind of jumps out at you about rural entrepreneurs and these clinicians and clinics, that you think is important for anybody that's listening to this to really understand how rural entrepreneurs and
Yes.
rural ventures are different?
I'll give you another one of my real life stories. So I'll answer your question first. From a rural to city perspective, I'd say we are now the term city. If I look at Aurora, to me, Aurora is a
Mm,
rural city. It's it's
yeah.
it's a destination. Cochrane is a rural city. Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, even though they're cities, but they're still in the
Mhm,
middle of nowhere, and they are
mhm.
this main focus of Owen Sound will be a rural city to be give you a
Yeah,
prime, right?
yeah, agreed.
So I'll give you an even finite example. What I found, I grew up in northern Quebec, right up by southern Labrador. So I grew up, pulled up my screen in the morning to look out across the water, the Straits of Belle Isle, and Newfoundland was on a clear day I can see Newfoundland. So I grew up in that area, and so we acquired a clinic in St. John's, Newfoundland that was going to Goose Bay, Labrador, which is central Labrador. And I says, no, we have to go to this place called Forto. And Forto is where I grew up. That's where my
Mhm,
my mom's family's from. I grew up on the Quebec side. My mom's family grew up on the Labrador side. I says, we have to go here, and I'll tell you why we have to go there. But I says, before we commit to going there, I'm telling this to my business partners. Goes, we have to put 3 dates on the calendar right now, and we have to stick to those dates. And and they go, well, what do you mean? It says because in the rural world we don't enjoy mosquitoes, and
mm,
they go, what are you talking about there? It says mosquitoes are the ones that fly away October to May and only come out May to October. But if you go down and see them October to May, you win the rural community over a lot better, because rural community people don't want fly by nights. They're always hesitant. So the first time we went down there, everybody got a hearing test, but almost nobody got hearing aids, because
mhm,
okay, are they coming back or what? So the first time I went down there,
mhm.
I went down there myself and became the advocate for this. So now they knew, hey, there's a local guy here. Yes, he does live outside of Toronto, but he's local. He come back. He bought a business. I gave my story,
Yeah.
and I introduced my business partner, saying she's coming down to do this. So I said, okay. And before we left, we told them the hospital that we're at. They gave us a room for free, which was beautiful. We told them we're back on this date. They booked us in already. So now the hospital knew that when somebody come in and asked for a hearing test, they knew we were coming back. Oh, all of a sudden we got a little bit of legitimacy. The second
Mhm,
time we went back, people started to buy. And then the third time we came back, people now we're seeing the ones that purchased, and now we're seeing new people buying. So now
yeah.
they see a trend that we're not running away. And we did something really good. We did two things really good. We end up purchasing a clinic in a closer city to them that they pretty much go to get a lot of their things. And we're
Mhm,
opening up the very first clinic, full-time clinic in Labrador to cater to the Labrador population. So
mhm,
we gave them a full sense of legitimacy. So now, even though in some areas, some people would drive the 14 hours to go to Costco, are not doing it anymore because they know we come there. So in the rural market, you have to be consistent and be present, and not give any perception that you're only here to just a one time buy and then you're gone. You have to show
yeah.
the support. That's what I grew up with. When somebody came by and says, "Hey, we're selling this," no, I'm not buying it. So that's how we established ourselves in the rural communities in around Newfoundland and Labrador. Was we were going there and we became consistent at going there, and we show that example with the business we have in Cornwall. We go to two other rural locations,
Mhm.
and in those two locations, we are there every week, like clockwork, and one place we're there every month, like clockwork. And the reception you get when you show up every week when you said you are, it this is how rural likes it. They like the support. They will support you in that.
Well, what's interesting about that too is maybe over time, what might evolve is you put in a permanent clinic, at some
Like
point in time.
Teeswater.
And yeah, it's like a really good way to test demand, but you're committed to that market. The way you're delivering the value or the service is through a hospital. with a quality clinician, right? Which is really interesting. And when you think about rural healthcare in general, it's a it's problematic for us because we can't find doctors,
Hmm.
our emergency departments are getting shut down. There's a lot of conflict, unfortunately, happening with certain communities and not having access to the services that they need. So I just wonder why something else couldn't be offered in that same model, where yeah, we don't have a family doctor, and maybe this is wishful thinking, but um, and I don't know whether this would be a private business doing this or uh, OHIP or whoever, but why don't you cycle in a family doctor every 3 times a year or 4 times a year, 5 times a year? You know, I don't see why you're solving a problem, right? The problem is I have to drive 14 hours to get my hearing checked.
Hmm.
Think about that. So what are they going to do? They're likely not going to do it.
Correct.
It's kind of ironic that some people might travel 14 hours to go to. I know you're using it just as an extreme example to go shopping, but to have their hearing checked, it's less likely they do it. I'm more interested. Oh, what can I say? Anyway,
It's
um,
just, but myself growing up in a small outpost fishing community, and growing up and understanding that in the winter you were isolated. The boat came in to supply you, and then you knew in January to be the last boat run till April when the ice gave away. So when you grow up in that rural mindset, you understand the rural mindset.
yeah,
It's I'm not taking nothing away from anybody growing up in the city and then moving to
yeah.
rural. I
No,
get
I
it, but
get that. Yeah,
when you grow up in that mindset that you, if the grocery store ran out of milk in the winter, they made one or two decisions. There's no milk coming in until 3 weeks from now, or they flew it in on the aircraft and you paid X amount of dollars more. But what people tend to see is that if you're there and you're there to support them, if they make a phone call to help, that's how you succeed in those rural communities. And that's the thing we do in Teeswater. Thunder Bay is a city of 100,000 people. We're in Thunder Bay, but it's a city that's in the middle of nowhere. So
yeah, yeah,
they,
yeah. So let's talk about um, just to close this off. If you had any advice for somebody that was um, either thrust into becoming an entrepreneur or had the opportunity like you did, where you became one, or somebody's thinking about it, is there any advice you would want to give in terms of what you think you know um, is required in today's day and age to be a successful entrepreneur? That's a tough one to answer, I know, but there's got to be
it's a
some
tough one.
things. Yeah.
It's a tough one to answer because you have an idea to start a business because you notice there's a shortfall of that service in that community, and you want to build your business around that shortfall.
Hmm.
Um, and even though you identified it as a shortfall, hanging your shingle out front saying "I am here now" doesn't necessarily mean that you will get the doors. That the doors will swing open; they'll run to you.
Hmm.
Uh, you have to be. What I've learned through the different groups, being part of different chambers of commerce, the BNI group and stuff like that, I've learned that everybody has the same struggle. Even part of your coffee talk every once a month, you know, where we all share our ups and downs. Bottom line is that gone are the days of thinking that you're going to succeed because you had a great idea and people are going to come here because you're the only one in that area. No,
Hmm.
because today the internet will give you more options to go other places. You have to be back to your grassroots, back to your grassroots level. You got to go and connect with the community people, with the leaders of the community, to get your name out there, to become that go to name. So it's not being an entrepreneur today, especially in today's 24-hour, 365-day online presence. You can't be afraid to still go and knock on a door and ask for some business, and
Hmm.
promote yourself all the time. And you see the ones that believe they have the best idea in the world, and they don't, and they're not succeeding, is because they're thinking that everybody else thinks they have the best idea. So we sell a product, as I always joke about. We sell a product, a hearing aid nobody wants. How do you get them to have it? You got to show them that you care about what they are talking about. you have a solution to what they're saying, and more importantly, you're here to support them after that initial sale is done. So you can't think, I have a great idea and I'm going to go do it. There's a lot more work behind it than that.
Daren, thanks so much for being on the Rural Entrepreneur podcast.
I
It's
thank
been
you
an
very much
absolute
for the
pleasure.
invitation. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
thanks again.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Have a great day. Thank
you
you.
too.
Bye now.